On March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 left Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia at 12:41 a.m. bound for Beijing. On board were 227 passengers and 12 crew members. The plane was allegedly cruising at 37,000 feet and traveling at a speed of 468 knots when air traffic control in Sabang handed over the aircraft to Ho Chi Minh City Approach Control. At 1:19 a.m., the pilots of MH370 turned off their transponder and the plane disappeared from radar. For the first hour, search and rescue efforts focused on the South China Sea as it was assumed that the plane had gone down near the Vietnamese islands of Paracel. But despite extensive searches, no debris was found. Authorities then realized that MH370 had flown across the Gulf of Thailand into the Andaman Sea, where it likely ran out of fuel and crashed. To date, no confirmed debris from MH370 has ever been found, and the plane's final resting place remains unknown. What makes the disappearance of MH370 so mysterious is that there are so many theories, but no concrete evidence to back them up. This has resulted in the deaths of 239 people being in vain. So, what really happened to MH370? We will explore 5 terrifying possibilities. But before we do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's start. Before we jump into the potential causes of the crash, let us take a look at the timeline of events beginning at 1:19 a.m. when the plane went off course. Between 1:19 a.m. and 1:21 a.m., MH370 flew over the Malay Peninsula, maintained a flight level of 350 and continued heading west. The plane then began descending rapidly from 35,000 feet to 10,000 feet in under 9 minutes. It is unlikely that such a steep descent would have gone unnoticed by the pilots of other planes in the area, which begs the question, why didn't anyone report seeing the plane? One possibility is that MH370 was engulfed by clouds, which could have hidden the plane from view. However, satellite data suggests that there were no clouds in the vicinity. So it's more likely that someone on board turned off the plane's exterior lights, which are typically used for nighttime flights. If this is true, it would mean that one of the people on board wanted to hide the plane from view. But why? Was it to facilitate a hijacking or something more sinister? At 1:26 a.m., MH370 made a U-turn and headed east back towards the Malay Peninsula. It's worth noting that the pilot would have needed to be very familiar with the area to execute such a maneuver in the dark without instruments. This could suggest that one of the pilots was from the region and was trying to evade detection. According to reports, all 6 of the pilots who flew MH370 that night had accumulated thousands of hours of flight time, and none had expressed any mechanical issues with the aircraft prior to takeoff. But if this is true, why did no pilot speak up about the possibility of a hijacking until after the plane had vanished from radar? By 1:35 a.m., MH370 had reached its maximum altitude of 45,000 feet and was traveling at a speed of 468 knots, faster than its cruising speed. Someone on board the plane had clearly taken control and was now attempting to fly the plane to its greatest possible height and speed. The plane continued on a northeasterly track across the Gulf of Thailand and into the Andaman Sea. At 1:41 a.m., the plane stopped transmitting its secondary radar data, which meant that it had turned off its transponder. But because the plane was still responding to primary radar, it remained visible on the radars of nearby planes and ground stations. Whoever was flying the plane was now doing so without any autopilot assistance. At 2:22 a.m., the plane slowed to 345 knots, which was probably its lowest speed since takeoff. After crossing the Strait of Malacca, MH370 made a 180-degree turn and began heading south into the Indian Ocean. The plane continued to lose altitude and was last seen on radar at 10,000 feet at 2:40 a.m. At some point after this, the engines stopped running and MH370 went down somewhere in the southern part of the Indian Ocean. So what caused the crash? As previously mentioned, there are many theories. Another theory is that the plane was brought down by a terrorist attack. However, there is no evidence to support this claim, and it's not much of a theory. If the plane was brought down by a bomb or other explosive device, we would have seen some sort of explosion on the radar. But this never happened, and even if the plane was blown up in midair, we would expect to see some debris on the surface of the water. Again, this has never happened. Some believe that the plane was shot down by a missile, but once again, there is no evidence to support this claim. Furthermore, if the plane was shot down, we would expect to see a plume of smoke on the radar. Again, this never happened. It's also worth noting that MH370 was carrying 2 tons of cargo, including lithium batteries and manganese dioxide, which is used in the production of fireworks and matches. Some believe that the cargo may have somehow caused the crash, but this is highly unlikely. Lithium batteries are commonly transported on airplanes, and the amount of manganese dioxide on board MH370 was well below the threshold for a dangerous shipment a few years ago. So what really happened to the plane? The truth is that we may never know. The only piece of MH370 that has ever been recovered is a wing, which was found on the shores of Reunion Island in July 2016. The wing had been in the water for an extended period of time, which made it difficult to determine a cause of the crash. Most of the experts who have examined the wing believe that it was damaged while the plane was in the air, but they cannot say for sure what caused the damage. In the end, the disappearance of MH370 remains one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. There are many theories, but no one knows what really happened to the plane. And until we find the wreck, we may never know. Now check out. What is the deadliest plane crash in history? Or watch. Why did the pilot open the emergency exit mid-flight?